Rock of Ages, written by Joan Didion in 1967. Alcatraz Island is covered with flowers now. Orange and yellow nasturtiums, geraniums, sweetgrass, blue iris, black-eyed Susans. Candy tuft springs up through the cracked concrete in the exercise yard. Ice plant carpets the rusting catwalks. Warning, keep off, U.S. property. The sign still reads, big and yellow and visible for perhaps a quarter of a mile, but since March 21st, 1963, the day they took the last 30 or so men off the island and sent them to prisons less expensive to maintain, the warning has been only pro forma. The gun turret's empty, the cell blocks abandoned. It is not an unpleasant place to be, out there on Alcatraz with only the flowers and the wind, and a bell buoy moaning and the tide surging through the Golden Gate. But to like a place like that, you have to want a moat. I sometimes do, which is why I'm talking about here. 3 people live on Alcatraz Island now. John and Marie Hart live in the same apartment they had for the 16 years that he was a prison guard. They raised 5 children on the island, back when their neighbors were the Birdman and Mickey Cohen. But the Birdman and Mickey Cohen are gone now, and so are the Hart's children. Moved away, the last married in a ceremony on the island in June 1966. One other person lives on Alcatraz, a retired merchant seaman named Bill Doherty. And, between them, John Hart and Bill Doherty are responsible to the General Services Administration for maintaining a 24-hour watch over the 22-acre island. John Hart has a dog named Duffy, and Bill Doherty has a dog named Duke. And although the dogs are primarily good company, they're also the first line of defense on Alcatraz Island. Marie Hart has a corner window which looks out to the San Francisco skyline, across 1.5 miles of bay, and she sits there and paints views, or plays her organ, songs like Old Black Joe, and Please Go Away and Let Me Sleep. Once a week, the Harts take their boat to San Francisco to pick up their mail and shop at the big Safeway in the marina, and occasionally Marie Hart gets off the island to visit her children. She likes to keep in touch with them by telephone, but for 10 months recently, after a Japanese freighter cut the cable, there was no telephone service to or from Alcatraz. Every morning, the KGO traffic reporter drops the San Francisco Chronicle from his helicopter, and when he has time, he stops for coffee. No one else comes out there except a man from the General Services Administration named Thomas Scott, who brings out an occasional congressman or somebody who wants to buy the island, or, once in a while, his wife and small son for a picnic. Quite a few people would like to buy the island, and Mr. Scott reckons that it would bring about $5 million in a sealed bid auction. But the General Services Administration is powerless to sell it until Congress acts on a standing proposal to turn the island into a peace park. Mr. Scott says that he will be glad to get Alcatraz off his hands, but the charge of a fortress islands could not be something a man gives up without ambivalent thoughts. I went out there with him a while ago. Any child could imagine a prison more like a prison than Alcatraz looks, for what bars and wires there are seem perfunctory, beside the point. The island itself was the prison, and the cold tide its wall. It is precisely what they called it, the Rock. Bill Doherty and Duke lowered the dock for us, and in the station wagon on the way up the cliff, Bill Doherty told Mr. Scott about small repairs he had made or planned to make. Whatever repairs get made on Alcatraz are made to pass the time, a kind of caretaker scrimshaw, because the government pays for no upkeep at all on the prison. In 1963, it would have cost $5 million to repair, which is why it was abandoned, and the $24,000 a year that it cost to maintain Alcatraz now is mostly for surveillance, partly to barge in the 400,000 gallons of water that Bill Doherty and the Harts use every year. There is no water at all on Alcatraz, one impediment to development, and the rest to heat 2 apartments and keep some lights burning. The buildings seem quite literally abandoned. The key locks have been ripped off from the cell doors, and the big electrical locking mechanisms disconnected. The tear gas vents in the cafeteria are empty, and the paint is buckling everywhere, corroded by the sea air, peeling off in great scales of pale green and ochre. I stood for a while in Al Capone's cell, 5 by 9 feet, number 200 on the second tier of B block, not one of the view cells, which were awarded on seniority. And I walked through the solitary block, totally black when the doors were closed. Snail Mitchell read a pencil scrawl on the wall of solitary 14, the only man that ever got shot for walking too slow. Beside it was a calendar, the months penciled on the wall with the days scratched off, May, June, July, August, of some unnumbered year. Mr. Scott, whose interest in penology dates from the day his office acquired Alcatraz as a potential property, talked about escapes and security routines and pointed out the beach where Ma Barker's son Doc was killed trying to escape. They told him to come back up, and he said he would rather be shot. And he was. I saw the shower room with the soap still in the dishes. I picked up a yellow program from an Easter service. Why seek ye the living among the dead? He is not here, but is risen. And I struck a few notes on an upright piano, with the ivory all rotted from the keys, and I tried to imagine the prison as it had been, with the big lights playing over the windows all night long, and the guards patrolling the gun galleries, and the silverware clanging into a bag as it was checked in after meals. Tried dutifully to summon up some distaste, some night terror of doors locking and the boat pulling away. But the fact of it was that I liked it out here, a ruin devoid of human vanities, clean of human illusions, an empty place reclaimed by the weather where a woman plays an organ to stop the winds whining and an old man plays ball with a dog named Duke. I could tell you that I came back because I had promises to keep, but maybe it was because nobody asked me to stay.